The elite academy worshipped geniuses, but they bullied one. A quiet black girl, always sitting alone, always ignored, until the day she solved a math problem their professor couldn't crack in 10 years. They laughed at her backpack. They mocked her thrift store shoes. They called her invisible. But when she walked to the board and wrote 3 lines that shattered their pride, the entire class went silent. Because what she revealed didn't just solve a math problem. It exposed the whole school, their lies, their hypocrisy, and the one truth they couldn't accept. The smartest mind in the entire academy was the girl they tried to break. The first time Amara Bennett walked through the marble doors of Halcyon Academy, she felt like she had stepped into another world. The hallways gleamed under crystal chandeliers, polished floors reflected the designer shoes of students rushing past, and the air carried the faint scent of money, expensive cologne, imported coffee, leather-bound textbooks. For most students, it was a playground of privilege. For Amara, a 16-year-old scholarship student, it was a battlefield. She was small, quiet, and often invisible. Her backpack was second-hand, her shoes worn at the edges, her clothes neat but plain. She kept her hair natural, braided tightly against her scalp, a choice that drew more attention than she wanted. As she walked into her first class, whispers rippled behind her back. Who let her in here? Did you see her shoes? Does she even know algebra? Amara had grown used to it. She had grown used to being the target. At her previous school, she had been the smart girl nobody cared about. Here, in Halcyon, it was worse. Here, intelligence was often overshadowed by wealth and status. She had learned quickly to sit at the back, raise her hand only when absolutely necessary, and keep her head down. But there was one thing they didn't know about her, a secret she had carried like a shield. From the age of 12, she had been solving problems most adults couldn't. Not just any problems, but the kind that mathematicians scratched their heads over. And there was one particular problem that had haunted Halcyon for over 10 years, a complex equation posted in the math wing, unsolved by any student, untouched by any teacher. It was a badge of pride for the school, a monument to their supposed superiority. Amara had solved it. 3 years ago, in the quiet of her bedroom, she had stared at the problem for hours, scribbling equations, tearing sheets, until a sudden clarity hit her. She wrote down a solution that even the faculty would have admired. But she had never shown anyone, not out of fear, but out of strategy. If she revealed her brilliance too early, she risked being crushed under envy, scrutiny, or worse, being dismissed as lucky or an anomaly. Now, walking these grand halls, she felt the familiar tight knot of anxiety in her stomach. The elite students, those born into wealth, those whose parents made donations that shaped the school's policies, saw her as an intruder. And the teachers? Many ignored her. When she raised her hand, her answers were sometimes dismissed, her insights attributed to guesswork. Her homeroom was no better. The students had already staked out their social territories. There was Serena, the golden-haired daughter of a tech billionaire who sneered at Amara the moment she sat down. There was Blake, who wore designer jackets and smirked at anyone not like him. And there was a chorus of murmured, "She doesn't belong here," whenever she moved her books. Yet Amara held herself with quiet dignity. She had learned long ago that showing fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. She opened her notebook, pulled out a pencil, and began working silently on the warm-up problems the teacher had assigned. Her hands moved quickly, confidently, and without hesitation. Each answer she wrote was correct, each solution elegant, but no one noticed, or if they did, they didn't care. That all changed the day Dr. Cade arrived, a new mathematics professor, tall and imposing, with silver streaks in his hair and eyes that seemed to see everything, walked into the classroom like he owned it. He scanned the room, his gaze settling on students who usually dominated discussions, but then almost imperceptibly, it shifted to Amara. She didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He simply nodded slightly, as if acknowledging a secret he already knew, that Amara Bennett was not to be underestimated. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of routine lessons, until Dr. Cade stood at the board and, with a quiet authority that commanded attention, wrote something that made Amara's heart skip a beat. The Halcyon Problem. Unsolved for over 10 years, anyone may attempt it. The room went still. A few students snickered. Serena whispered, "Bet she can't even add fractions right." Blake laughed loud enough for the class to hear. Scholarship girl versus a decade of failure? Easy win. Amara looked at the problem. The symbols, the equations, the complexity, every part of it called to her like an old friend. She felt a thrill surge through her. This was it, the challenge she had been waiting for. But she didn't move immediately. She stayed seated, pencil poised, eyes fixed on the chalkboard. Around her, students whispered, rolled their eyes, and exchanged bets on how long it would take her to fail. Amara smiled faintly, almost to herself. They didn't know. None of them knew. That the solution wasn't just in her head. It was already etched into her mind, polished, perfected, waiting for the right moment. The bell rang, signaling the end of class. But she didn't leave. She stayed, quiet and unnoticed by all, except Dr. Cade, whose gaze remained fixed on her, almost like a challenge. The first part of her story at Halcyon Academy had begun, and it promised to be nothing like anyone expected, because the quiet girl they pretended not to see was about to show them something they could never ignore.
The following morning, the math wing buzzed with anticipation. The Halcyon Problem had been posted on the board for decades, a cruel emblem of intellectual supremacy. Students whispered in hushed tones as they walked past, many sneaking glances at the complex maze of symbols, factorials, and fractions that made even seasoned juniors falter. This was the kind of challenge that separated the privileged smart from the rest of the academy. Amara sat in her usual seat, hands folded neatly on her desk, staring at the chalkboard with quiet intensity. Around her, her classmates bristled with arrogance. Serena twirled a pencil between her fingers, smirking at Blake, who leaned back in his chair with the kind of self-satisfaction only the privileged could muster. Bets were whispered under breaths. 5 minutes. She'll give up before she even starts. Dr. Cade entered the room, his presence commanding silence. "Today," he said, voice calm but resonant, "anyone may attempt the Halcyon Problem. No hints, no collaboration. Solve it if you can. But be warned, no student has succeeded in 10 years. A ripple of excitement and fear spread through the classroom. Laptops opened, pens scribbled nervously, and calculators clicked. Students stretched their hands across notebooks, already prepared to dive into chaos. Except Amara. She remained still, her eyes scanning the problem. Every part of it, the twisted sequences, the nested logarithms, the combinatorial variables, was familiar. She could almost see the solution before her eyes, as if it had been waiting there, untouched, for her alone. Serena leaned toward Blake and whispered loud enough for Amara to hear, "Watch this. She'll look at it, panic, and fold." Blake chuckled, tipping his head back. "Scholarship kids. Always cute when they try." Amara didn't flinch. She didn't even move. Her pencil hovered above her notebook, ready to capture the brilliance already alive in her mind. Minutes passed. Students scratched, calculated, and erased frantically. One by one, they began muttering about impossibility, tearing pages from their notebooks in frustration. Some even whispered to Dr. Cade, asking for a hint. The professor's eyes, however, remained calm and observant, occasionally flicking to Amara's desk. Then it happened. A hush fell over the room as Amara quietly stood, slid her notebook into her bag, and walked toward the board. Every whisper stopped. Every gaze followed her. Serena's smirk faltered. Blake's laughter died in his throat. The entire class seemed to hold its collective breath. Amara picked up the chalk. With steady hands, she wrote only 3 lines, not the complicated series of calculations anyone expected, not the frantic steps her peers were taking, just 3 clean, elegant lines that made the problem bend under her control. The room was silent. A pin could have dropped and shattered the tension. Dr. Cade's eyes widened slightly. He stepped closer, leaning on the podium, scrutinizing her work. His mouth opened, then closed. The solution was not just correct, it was revolutionary. "You've solved it," he said finally, almost in disbelief. "In 3 steps?" Amara nodded politely. "Yes, Professor." The students erupted in murmurs. "How?" someone whispered. "Did she cheat?" another shouted. Phones were secretly raised to record the moment, the excitement cracking through the air like lightning. Serena's face flushed crimson, a mix of embarrassment and fury. "That's impossible," she hissed under her breath, glaring at Amara. Blake's confident posture crumpled, his pride stinging. Nobody had ever anticipated this. The quiet scholarship girl, the one they mocked, the one they ignored, had outsmarted the entire elite student body. Dr. Cade stepped forward, chalk in hand, and replicated her work on the board. The logic held, flawless and elegant. In 3 lines, she had not only solved the problem, but had exposed a subtle flaw in the traditional method the school had taught for years, as if the foundations of Halcyon's elite curriculum had trembled under her fingertips. "Unbelievable," whispered a student in the back. "She didn't just solve it, she improved it." Amara returned to her seat, calm as ever, as Dr. Cade addressed the room. "This solution," he said, voice steady but filled with awe, "is not just correct, it reveals a method no student or teacher here has used before. This is innovation, clarity, genius." The video of her solution, taken by one of the students, immediately circulated. Within minutes, her name was on everyone's lips, but admiration was scarce, envy dominated. Whispers turned to plots. Some students accused her of cheating, others questioned her background. A few stared in awe, secretly wishing they could be like her. Amara, however, remained focused. She knew the chaos she had unleashed, but she also knew something else. The world had just caught its first glimpse of her mind. And this was only the beginning. Because when the quiet girl finally spoke with numbers, the elite of Halcyon Academy had no choice but to listen. And everyone else was about to find out why they should fear her brilliance. By the end of the week, Amara Bennett had become the center of attention at Halcyon Academy, but not in the way most students dreamed. The quiet girl who had walked unnoticed through marble halls had suddenly exposed herself as the sharpest mind in the school. And where brilliance shines, envy follows. Serena's whispers had grown into conspiracies. Blake's jokes had turned into veiled threats. Even students who had previously ignored Amara now eyed her with thinly veiled suspicion. They whispered in corners, plotting ways to undermine her. "She can't be allowed to win the decathlon," one student said. "We need to make sure she fails. Everyone knows she's an outsider." The school's elite, accustomed to unquestioned dominance, couldn't accept being outshined by a scholarship girl. They spread rumors, subtly questioned her methods, and even vandalized her locker. Pages of her neatly written solutions were torn, books slashed, and messages scrawled, "Stay in your lane." Yet Amara refused to react publicly. Every insult, every jab, every attempt to intimidate her became invisible armor. Behind closed doors, however, the pressure was real. Her mother's recent illness weighed heavily on her mind. Nights were spent balancing care for her mother with late-night study sessions. The halcyon problem was now just the beginning. The upcoming school-wide academic decathlon, a prestigious competition with trophies, scholarships, and recognition, loomed on the horizon. Dr. Cade noticed her struggle. He found her in the library, surrounded by textbooks and scribbled notes. "You're carrying too much on your own," he said gently. "They will attack what they fear most, but your mind is stronger than their envy. Don't let them make you doubt yourself." Amara looked up, eyes tired but determined. "It's not just the school," she whispered. "They'll try to destroy everything I've worked for. They'll take this victory and twist it into something ugly." Dr. Cade smiled knowingly. "Then let's make sure your brilliance cannot be ignored. I've entered you into the decathlon. They don't know it yet, but this will be your stage. Just remember, the strongest mind doesn't always scream the loudest. Sometimes it speaks in silence, and that silence carries power." Word of the halcyon problem had already gone viral among the students. Videos circulated in hushed groups, and messages of doubt and ridicule spread as fast as praise. Some students accused her of cheating, others claimed she had prior help. The elite families, protective of their reputations, began murmuring complaints to faculty. Amara felt the weight of it all pressing down, but she had learned long ago to focus only on what she could control: her mind, her preparation, and her resolve. The decathlon would test not just her intelligence, but her courage. And while the whispers threatened to drown her, she understood one truth: brilliance always attracts resistance, and sometimes the brightest lights are the ones most fiercely shadowed by envy. As she left the library, a piece of paper fluttered to the floor. She picked it up and read the hastily scrawled message: "We'll make sure you regret this." Amara folded it calmly and tucked it into her bag. She walked down the marble hallway with the same quiet grace she had shown from day one. Let them whisper, let them plot, let them underestimate her. Because when the decathlon began, it wouldn't just be a test of knowledge, it would be a revelation. And the girl they tried to break would soon show them exactly why they could never ignore her. The day of the Halcyon Academy Decathlon arrived with a mix of anticipation and tension that gripped every hallway, classroom, and auditorium. The competition was legendary, a grueling series of academic challenges designed to crown the school's top scholar. For Amara Bennett, it was both a stage and a battlefield. The elite students, her rivals, had prepared for months, armed with private tutors, insider notes, and a sense of entitlement that made them confident victory was theirs. Serena and Blake walked into the auditorium, whispering plans to distract her, exchanging smirks that implied she would fail under pressure. Their confidence, however, would prove to be their undoing. Round after round, Amara moved with quiet precision. In verbal reasoning, she decoded riddles faster than anyone expected. In logic puzzles, she anticipated patterns that left even the top-tier students scratching their heads. In advanced mathematics, she solved problems that others attempted with frantic, inefficient calculations. Whispers grew among the audience, "She's unstoppable." Then came the final challenge, a single problem posted on the screen, a super problem rumored to be unsolvable by anyone under doctoral level. The judges, including Dr. Cade, watched tensely as students frantically scribbled calculations. Amara stepped forward calmly. The room fell silent, all eyes on her. Her peers' earlier confidence faltered as she picked up the chalk. They had underestimated her, as they always did. But Amara didn't approach it like her classmates. While others attacked the problem with brute force calculations, she paused, observing patterns, visualizing connections. Then, slowly, she began to write. A new method, elegant, concise, and intuitive. It was unlike anything anyone had expected. The auditorium watched in stunned silence. Lines of logic unfolded with clarity, revealing not just a solution, but a deeper insight into the problem's structure. The judges leaned forward, exchanging looks of astonishment. Dr. Cade's hand hovered over the podium, his expression a mixture of pride and disbelief. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Finally, Amara stepped back, chalk still in hand. She had solved it, not by brute force, not by copying precedent, but by thinking differently, by seeing the problem in a way the school's elite could not. The judges stood murmuring among themselves. One of them whispered, "This isn't a high school solution. This is doctoral-level discovery." The room erupted into a mix of cheers and stunned silence. Serena's face was pale with fury. Blake's jaw was tight with disbelief. The students who had mocked her now watched in awe, unsure how to react. Dr. Cade approached her, his voice calm but filled with reverence. "Amara, you've done something extraordinary. Not only have you solved the impossible, but you've redefined what we thought was possible here." Amara nodded quietly. She didn't need the applause. She had already proven what mattered most. Her mind, her resilience, and her brilliance could not be denied. By the time the decathlon concluded, the results were clear. Amara had not just won, but had reshaped the entire academic hierarchy of Halcyon Academy. And while the elite students would spend weeks nursing bruised egos, Amara had demonstrated that quiet intelligence, courage, and perseverance could outshine privilege every single time. The girl they tried to ignore had become the girl they could no longer dismiss, and the world, it seemed, was finally watching. The aftermath of the decathlon spread through Halcyon Academy like wildfire. News of Amara Bennett's victory traveled faster than anyone expected. Her solution had not only won the competition, it had rewritten the limits of what students and faculty thought was possible. Social media in the academy erupted. Videos of her three-line Halcyon problem solution and the final decathlon performance went viral overnight. For the first time, the quiet girl who had once been invisible was impossible to ignore. Universities and institutions reached out, offering full scholarships and opportunities that many students only dreamed of. Meanwhile, the elite students, once secure in their unchallenged dominance, faced the stark reality of having been outshined by someone they had underestimated. Serena and Blake, who had spent months plotting against her, were forced to watch silently as Amara's brilliance was celebrated. Their whispers of envy and ridicule faded under the weight of undeniable genius. Dr. Cade, proud and supportive, revealed to the faculty that he had submitted her groundbreaking solution to an international mathematics journal, a move that stunned the academic community. Within 48 hours, her work was being praised globally as innovative and revolutionary. Amara returned to school not as a timid scholarship student, but as the Academy's top scholar. Hallways that once echoed with her invisibility now hummed with recognition. Even the teachers who had ignored her brilliance were forced to acknowledge it. And through it all, she remained calm, grounded, and composed. Her confidence no longer hidden, but refined. But for Amara, the greatest victory wasn't the trophies, accolades, or viral fame. It was the chance to show her mother, who had supported her through every hardship, that her strength and intelligence could never be ignored. Sitting by her mother's bedside in the hospital, Amara held her hand and whispered, "Look, Mama, they finally saw me." Her mother's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of pride and relief. "I always knew, baby. I always knew." The school, meanwhile, had no choice but to reckon with the truth.
Policies were revised, the bullying confronted, and Amara's story became a lesson in courage, resilience, and brilliance. Students and faculty alike realized that intelligence does not bow to privilege, and true genius can emerge from any corner, no matter how quiet. As she walked through the campus, Amara's eyes met those of students who had doubted her. Some avoided her gaze, others looked on in awe. She smiled gently, silently teaching the most important lesson. Quiet girls don't stay quiet forever, especially when they're smarter than the world expects. And now it's your turn to see her journey, to witness her courage, and to be inspired by a story that proves one thing: brilliance cannot be hidden, and determination will always shine through. If you want to see more stories of underdogs crushing the odds and redefining what's possible, subscribe to our channel now and hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment of inspiration. Don't just watch, join the journey and see what happens when the quietest voices finally speak.